All right, lesson 21. So we are doing distributive property and order of operations. This is a massive lesson, massive lesson. All right, so two huge concepts wrapped into one lesson. Thank you, Saxon Math. So let's get into it. Let's start with the distributive property. Okay, so if we wanted to break the distributive property down into a property like we've done previously with when we went over commutative properties, associative properties, identity property, zero property, right? We used A, B, and C for the most part to kind of demonstrate what the distributive property allows us to do. So you often hear people say the distributive property is really multiplication over addition, right? And so if we look at this left side here, what we're really saying is that as it's written, right? A quantity B plus C, I have to do the B plus C first because it falls in these parentheses. But what I'm also allowed to do is distribute. I'm going to distribute this A. So normally I would multiply the A time by whatever B plus C is. But here I'm going to distribute the A. So you'll see people like to draw these arrows. I'm going to distribute the A to both of the terms or all of the terms in parentheses. And so I'm multiplying A by B and A by C and adding them together. So A times B equals AB. A times positive C equals positive AC. And so I can then stick these together to get AB plus AC. So when we distribute, it's really this kind of another word that we could use is multiply. Okay. So I have two examples here for you. See if you can do what we just did here to both of these examples, 1 and 2, on your own. All right. See if you can get something that looks similar to this. Okay. So pause it, give it a shot. All right. So welcome back. You're going to see problems like this where it says distribute, and it'll give you this expression. Okay. So I'm going to distribute the 3 this time to both my terms inside the parentheses. So I'll draw my arrows to just help me keep track. So the first thing I'm doing is 3 times W, which is 3W. And then I'm doing 3 times positive M, which is positive 3M. All right, if you got that, give yourself a pat on the back. Let's move down to number 2. Again, I'm distributing a 3 this time to both terms in the parentheses. So I'll do one at a time this time. So my first arrow goes to the X, gets me 3 times X, which is 3X. My second arrow gets me 3 times 2, positive 2, which is positive 6. So this answer is 3x plus 6. Okay. So you'll see a handful of these on your practice set. I think you guys should be fairly familiar with this. This next part is kind of where it gets a little trickier. All right. And so you're going to see problems that ask you to factor. And so when I see factor, I think divide. Okay. I think divide. Distribute, I think multiply. Factor, I think divide. Another thing to think about is when I'm a big Jeopardy fan. So I always think about factor problems starting off as the answer to a distribute problem, right? This looks very similar to this, right? This looks very similar to this. The answers to my distributed problems are the questions in a factor, right? So Jeopardy is famous because they're a game show where the host, Alex Trebek, reads clues that are actually the answers to questions. And then the contestants chime in and provide an answer in the form of a question. So again, it'd be like me giving you a test and giving you all of the answers on the test and asking you to write a question that results in that answer. So factor problems are the answers, and we're being asked to come up with what was the distribute question that helped us arrive at this. So it's almost always going to follow a format of a number outside parentheses, a number or term outside parentheses, and then in parentheses, a handful of terms. Okay. So here we go. Here, let's see if, let me back up. So in this example, we have AB plus AC, the answer to a distribute problem. And I need to figure out what can I divide both AB and AC by, right? And whatever that is what's going to be kicked out of the parentheses. So both of these have in common an A. So I can divide both AB and AC by A. So A goes outside, and then what's left over? Well, AB divided by A is just B. AC divided by A is just positive C. So B plus C is what's inside. So try that with these. See if you can come up with, I'll give you a hint, right? It's going to look something like a term. And then in parentheses, since these are both going to be plus signs in here. So here's your format, right? See if you can come up with the answer that fits here. Pause it, give it a shot. All right, welcome back. So again, similar to my example, I can divide both of these by A, right? They both have an A, so they have that in common. So A is what's going to be kicked out, right, of my parentheses. What's left over after I divide both of these by A? Just X and Y. So inside is X and Y. So my answer would be A, quantity X plus Y. Down here, a little bit trickier. So what do these both have in common? You might be tempted to say X, but no, right? 9 does not have an X. You might be tempted to say 6, right? But I can't take a 6 out of 9, at least not to leave a whole number. So we want to leave a whole number here, right? Or an integer. So I'm going to look for multiples or factors, right? Hence the word factor of both 6 and 9, right? So I know that both of these are divisible by 3. So I am going to factor out a 3. So 3 is what gets kicked out. So what's 6x divided by 3? So 6 and 3 cancel to become 1 and 2. My x stays. 9 and 3 cancel to become 1 and 3. So I get 2x plus 3 left inside. Right? And again, to just tie it back to the Jeopardy, these are the questions, right? If this is a distribute question. So if I distributed this 3, I could check this. If I distribute, does that equal what I started with? 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times positive 3 is positive 9. So yes, this checks out. Okay, that is distributive property. So let's move on now to order of operations. All right. So many of you guys have heard, and I know we've talked about it so far this year, of PEMDAS, right? Which is our mnemonic device to help us remember the order of operations. And many people take that a step further and say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, which is great. It helps us a number of ways. However, there is one fault in PEMDAS, and that is that I could say it's not just PEMDAS, but it could be, I could make a case for it being PEDMAS. Right? I could also make a case for it to be PEMDSA. Right? Heck, I could even make a case for it to be PEDMASA. right? What else could I make it? I could make it, is that it? Maybe that's it. Right? But so what do we mean by this? All right. So first, let's just go in order. First, we start with parentheses, right? Which doesn't just include parentheses, but also brackets, braces, any nested terms, something we'll cover later in the year. But really, we just start talking about numerators and denominators. All right. So any grouping symbols. Believe it or not, this also includes absolute value, right? So these are considered grouping symbols. So these all follow these braces, right? Brackets, right? Parentheses. These are all grouping symbols and they fall under P, right? So if I have any of these, I need to do them first. You'll notice that P always comes first, okay? So when I have these, I also need to make sure that I work from inside out. Okay, work from inside out. All right, so that's P, that's number one. Next, so if any problem has a grouping symbol, they need to be accounted for first. I'm working from inside out. Next, I go to exponents, E, exponents. Again, E is always the second letter, so that always comes after the grouping symbols. Exponents also include square roots, right? That's just the inverse of exponents. So if I have x squared, the inverse of that, right, would be the square root. Okay, so those don't equal each other, but are inverse of each other. All right, so that's the second step. I think everybody's pretty good here. This is where we can make some mistakes. So 3 is actually it's multiplication and division. They are the same step. Okay, they are the same step. Multiplication and division are the same step. So let's write that down. I'm going to go to text. I'll stay black. Multiplication and division are the same step. This is so important, right? So important because guys get this wrong all the time. Okay, multiplication and division are the same step, as are addition and subtraction. Okay, addition and subtraction, the same step. Okay, and in both cases, we are going to solve these from left to right. So we always go from left to right. Perform from left to right. So the mistake here, and this is why I highlighted that we can change what PEMDAS actually is, right? Because guys get it in their head that, oh, it's PEMDAS. They think multiplication always comes before division, but that's not the case. That's why I said it can be PEDMAS. The D can come before the M. If division is further to the left than multiplication, and they are the same step, then I divide before I multiply. Same with addition and subtraction. Guys say it's PEMDAS. So addition has to come before subtraction. Not true. Not true. These are the same step. A and S are the same step. So whichever comes first, reading left to right, you need to perform first. It is not a hard and fast rule that it's always PEMDAS. Okay? Got to keep that straight. So I've put here two examples of this that can where guys can make this mistake. Okay? So what I'd like you to do is pause it, see if you can solve this, applying the order of operations, see if you can solve each of these problems, and then after solving, see if you can come up with and identify what a common mistake might be. Put yourselves in the shoes of somebody who only lives their life by PEMDAS, not sometimes PEDMAS, or not sometimes PEMSA, or not sometimes PEDMASA, right? See if you can put yourself in the shoes of a man who lives his life thinking it is always PEMDAS and come up with the common mistake answer. So pause it now, see if you can do that. All right, welcome back. Here we go. So first, let's solve this as we should, okay? Knowing that it's not always PEDMAS. I'm sorry, PEMDAS. We'll go green for this is correct way. So I have subtraction and I have addition in the same step. So I know that I need to perform these from left to right. So the first thing I'm going to do, believe it or not, is subtraction. So I'm going to say 8 minus 3 is 5. And that leaves the plus 2 in my next step. So then it becomes 5 plus 2, which is 7. Okay, this is the correct answer. This is the correct answer. If you are a strictly PEMDAS guy, we'll go red, your mistake is you're going to say, PEMDAS says I need to add before I subtract. So I'm going to add 3 and 2 and get 5. And so my next line would be 8 minus 5, which would get me 3. If you got 3, this is wrong. And you, right now, are a guy who still lives in a world where PEMDAS is the only option. If you got 7, you are now aware that it is not just PEMDAS. It is this would be an example of PEMSA. We subtracted before we added. That's okay. That is okay. All right, over here, we have division and multiplication. 64 divided by 8 times 2. So I'm going to go with the mistake version first. I'm going to go with the guy who lives in the PEMDAS only world. And he says, pretty sure that's an M before a D. So I'm going to multiply before I divide. 8 times 2 is 16. So this gets me 64 divided by 16, which gets me 4. All right. And then somebody else comes along and says, whoa, wait a second. It's not just PEMDAS. It could be PEDMAS, right? I'm going to go, if I have the multiplication and division in the same step, I'm going to go left to right. So I'm going to divide before I multiply. So this would be 64 divided by 8 is 8 times 2, which is 16. This is correct. And the PEDMAS guy just blew the top off of the PEMDAS guy and said, welcome to the new reality that is PEDMAS, PEMSA, PEDMASA, right? Sometimes it will be PEMDAS, okay? This is a crucial component to PEMDAS and the order of operations. Multiplication and division are the same step. Addition and subtraction are the same step. You need to perform these from left to right. That's all I got for you. Hopefully this was clear. Reach out if you have any questions. See you, fellas.